And thank you for joining us for our fifth installment in our Lessons Learned from Industry Leaders series. My name is Jason Mills. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications at KMC Controls, and I want to take this time to welcome and thank each one of you for joining us. On our panel today is Tim Vogel, Kevin Pack, and Reino Mattila. Tim is KMC's Director of IoT. He spent the last 5 years promoting and selling IoT solutions in the industrial and building automation space. Currently, Tim is leading sales channel initiatives across traditional and new partner markets. Tim holds a BS in marketing and an MBA from Indiana University South Bend. Kevin is DENT Instruments Director of Sales and Marketing. Kevin brings more than 20 years of experience in sales, marketing, product development, and product management, with more than 10 years in the HVAC and energy management industry at various industries Schneider Electric. Reino is a strategic account manager at DENT Instruments. Reino brings more than a decade of experience in the HVAC industry, working with high-powered sales and marketing teams with a strong emphasis on customer service and relationships. Today's panelists will be discussing metering and the IoT in a post-COVID world. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to add them to the chat box. We'll do our best to answer those questions at the end of the webinar. And any questions that we can't get to, we'll do our very best to email you those answers as soon as possible. I don't want to take any more time than I need to, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Tim. Tim?
Thank you, Jason. I also want to thank Kevin and Reino for joining us today. It's going to be a good conversation. And let me go ahead and bring up my screen here. And one of the things that we want to do just to kick off is we want to kind of set a baseline understanding of exactly the topics that we're talking about. So first of all, I want to kind of lay out exactly what IoT is from our standpoint, how we're approaching it, and then we'll turn it over to Dent. We'll talk a little bit about specifically the kind of metering that we're talking about. So when we first kind of set out, and this again lays all the groundwork for what IoT is and KMC Controls minds. When we first set out to do IoT, we wanted to identify the gaps in the marketplace that we felt like this new technology could help address and fix. And we're very happy to say that with our platform and the approach that we're taking, we've been able to address all of these, whether it's disparate or disconnected systems, whether it's individual sensors or multiple systems across an entire enterprise, or complicated upgrades that were requiring rip and replace. How do we stretch those resources out? Giving people better mobile-friendly interfaces. So, can we develop something? And we did develop something that was mobile first. And as part of that mobile first strategy, how do we make it an extremely easy lift, give tenants visibility into that, whether they're business owners or people just working in offices? And then integration was a huge part of that, not only on the ground level, but then also up in the cloud. If we're bringing up all this data, how can we push it to exactly what we need to push it to? Security practices, obviously not keeping up with bad actors. I think a lot of people are playing catch up. And so we wanted to use, best practices and modern protocols and architecture so that we could address all the security, again, from the ground all the way up to the cloud, which then makes the systems inherently more IT friendly. So now we can talk to IT departments in a lot easier ways. In the morning, they may be, foes, and by the afternoon, they're friends once we describe how we're handling security and even the hardware that we're putting in. Additionally, we think of how can we better access the system? Well, cloud-based, we see cloud as the future, and so we wanted that to be kind of the central component to our system, which then makes it really easy to have visibility into buildings so that you could perform a bit of triage, maybe do remote service, or just general service, get a better idea of what you need to do. And then we operate as a SaaS platform or software as a service, which is an excellent way to, as we talk about driving revenue and ROI later in the conversation, it's just another way to have a recurring revenue mechanism inside of your company. So with that kind of as, why IoT, why did we even go down the path 5 years ago? With that, after a couple iterations, we have KMC Commander as it is today. We're an Intel market ready solution. Intel's been an excellent partner of ours. We're pulling in over 20 million data points a day. Over 700 buildings are utilizing the platform. 99% uptime, so it's a very stable and reliable system. And then also we've brought in over 100 different brands of equipment, and we'll talk about that here in a second. When you talk about IoT, architecture is always important. So where our platform is going to sit, where the Commander platform is going to sit, is going to be on top of a building automation system or a sensor system or a metering system that's already in a building, or that may be added alongside the KMC Commander install. So what would happen is whatever's there, that's doing the primary controlling. That's where your sequence of operation, are sequences of operation are. All that's funneled into the gateway, aggregated, and then sent to the cloud. But not only can we take in KMC equipment, which we're showing here, but any other brand of equipment as well. So as I mentioned, we brought in over 100 different brands so far, and almost every installation we're seeing all kinds of new equipment. And this is really key when you talk about IoT. If it's a siloed sort of brand-focused approach, it's not going to be nearly as successful. It's important to make sure that you're as not agnostic as possible when you're bringing in that data, but then also you're as agnostic as possible when you're pushing data out. So we're not necessarily brand focused. We largely look at open protocols, BACnet, Modbus, SNMP. IoT is driving a lot of open protocol adoption, which is great. But of these partners, we certainly have preferred partners. These are people that we have partnered with a lot closer than others. And joining us today, as mentioned earlier, is DENT. And we have installed DENT in many Commander solutions. And we love the product. We love the data that we're able to get from them, the reliability, the quality, all those things. And I think you'll get a sense of that as Kevin and Reino talk a little bit more. So what do you do with all this data once it's up? Again, thinking in terms of what is IoT, we're going to take that data, aggregate it at that gateway, and push it to the cloud, where you're going to get basic dashboarding, basic alarming, scheduling, reporting, very basic analytics, trending. All of that's just basic inherent features of our system. If you want, again, any tenant to see it, you can see that as well. Because that's another point of IoT, is how can we get this data into more hands more reliably and faster and cheaper and more efficiently to a broader audience. Not only the service guys, not only the building owners, but tenants. Completely customizable experience, which is important. You can't pigeonhole installations into an IoT solution. But then here's the other part of it. So we talked about the on-premise, we talked about the gateway, what Commander offers, but then there's all these integrations as well. Another key component to IoT, because if you're only taking that data and using it for one thing, you're not really getting all the benefit out of it. So examples include Verkada cloud-based security cameras and how we could bring in one of their live feeds into our dashboard. Digitalware, which is an IT networking monitoring software that looks for vulnerabilities, can do penetration testing. They use Commander to help pull up all the OT network information. So now they could bring along a complete holistic approach to a building security. Integration with anything Google. Google obviously has some fantastic APIs you could utilize. Analytics from companies like Resolute BI, or even an upcoming add-on for indoor air quality that we'll be announcing very soon called Hawken AQ, where you take all this building data and then display it in such a way that people can get quick snapshots of how the indoor air quality is. So again, IoT is not just a single HVAC-focused approach, or at least how we're approaching it is not a siloed approach, just trying to tackle a single thing. We want to bring in whatever data we can and push that data wherever it needs to go. So that's kind of, I know it's a lot of slides, a lot of talking, but I just want to give an overview of what we talk about or what we mean when we say IoT, cloud-based solutions, and the like. So with that, let me go ahead and pull up my notes so I make sure that we hit all of our talking points. We have some excellent topics to cover. Okay, so that was from the IoT perspective. Now I want to turn it over to Kevin and Reino to talk a little bit about DENT and metering. So, and also the title of this is in a post-COVID world. The interesting thing is it's not really post-COVID, it's very much present COVID. but it's kind of I would say we're kind of post-COVID shock, maybe, but it's changing. It's changing a lot of things in a lot of people's minds about a lot of different topics. IoT and metering are not the least on the list. In fact, I think they're very much at the top. So I've given my perspective. I'd love to hear just from you guys about what is metering in terms of what we're talking about in light of COVID and IoT and all of that. So pretty broad, but what are some things you have to say around that?
So I think when we're talking about metering for DENT instruments, we're really talking about electrical submetering and energy monitoring. Smart meters and network meters for us, these devices attach to buildings and connect to a smart energy grid, which allows companies and customers to more effectively manage the energy flow into their buildings. That's never become more apparent in a time like now. They're a larger part, they're part of a larger grid, which also includes temperature, humidity, pressure, airflow, water, and gas. So it's a total smart ecosystem that we're looking at, but it's a backbone of energy monitoring. And these smart meters is one of the first steps in developing a building-wide smart grid system that helps address challenges surrounding energy consumption and usage. Transparency is everything these days. It feels like people want to know where their spend is, what's going on. Every month, a CEO or a building owner sits down and looks at that power bill, and the first thing they think, other than that's a lot of money, or they want to understand, is everything running efficiently? With IoT solutions for smart metering, you can improve customer service and your bottom line through really good insights that are developed from meter data. Some of our meters spit out as many as 1,500 points of data. That too can be fully customizable. There's a lot of things when you say smart meters and you start talking about data points that can scare a lot of people. Who has time to look through 1,500 registers or 1,500 points? That's just a little mind-blowing. So we can really we can narrow that down and customize things, create a dashboard like you're talking about with the commander to include the data points that we monitor. All of these things that I've spoken about before, temperature, humidity, pressure, airflow, refrigeration for some different environments, that's a lot of spend. Now, what's that's done in the COVID world is yet to totally be determined. Right now, I can tell you that it's for our customer base and what we're seeing in our applications, it's completely changed the way people work and live their lives. All of our routines have now been altered in a way with interacting with one another. Everybody's familiar with the social distancing. That changes a lot in how buildings function and are operated. A lot of businesses are going to see their occupancy, for example, decrease as more and more people tend to work remotely. That's not changing how the way a building is run. Buildings still need to be powered for those people that are there, or critical environments. COVID's put a huge emphasis on limiting and eliminating human interactions, including the way data is collected and shared. And customers, consumers need to feel confident walking into a building, for example, a grocery store, a big box retail store, that it's going to be an environment where they feel safe. And a lot of times that all starts at metering. You really can't monitor what you don't meter. And some employers, some business owners, building owners need to understand how efficiently their systems are running, whether their airflow is running correctly, if there's a clogged filter, how's their HVAC. So a lot of times people are going to look at that overall spend and they're going to want to understand, am I running effectively and efficiently for what my building needs to be, or do I need to pare things down? That's really what we're talking about these days.
Yeah, and Kevin, you made so many good points. One of the points you made is how you can get a lot of data out of these meters, right?
Yeah.
You set up to 1,500 points for a single meter, which is a huge amount of data. One of the things we always talk about is with IoT, it always makes sense to start small, plan big, start small, and scale fast, right? So if you're putting in devices and sensors, that can pull in all kinds of data, but you know you don't need it all right now. That's fine. Just pull in the 10, 20 points that really matter to you. That's going to impact your bottom line. It's going to impact your understanding of your operations. And then if you want to expand out later, you made the good choice. You have everything you need in place, and now you could bring it up into your cloud platform easy. So yeah, I mean, I would always say, again, plan big, plan for the future, and install what you need. Now, when it comes to installing, we want to be extremely intentional with these webinar series. Our marketing department's done an excellent job with that. But I do want to give you guys an opportunity. Can you just give us and Reino, maybe you can do this. Could you just give us a high-level overview of what kinds of meters you guys typically offer and put in place?
Sure. So all of our meters, are going to be a Modbus and BACnet platform. All are going to have really the serial RS-485 output or the Ethernet capabilities. So we have single circuit and multi-circuit power meters available to the KMC system integrators. And then also a lot of guys are using our data logger that they'll use for measurement and verification work. So you'll see a lot of that there. So that's kind of the different levels of meters that we have, kind of the high overview.
Yeah, very high, right? Because you could probably give hours and hours of presentations, and I'm sure you do on a daily basis.
For sure.
So, all right, so there's our baseline. There's our understanding of what we'll talk about. So let's take a look a little bit at the history. All right, let's start with there's obviously been an uptick in meters being installed and the adoption of it. Can you give us an idea of what does DENT see in terms of what's driving that uptick in interest, let's say for the last 5 years? And then you mentioned it a little bit about how COVID is changing things. What about like the last 5 months? I know, for instance, one thing we talk about all the time is HVAC systems are starting to run more and more as ASHRAE standards come out, and people are trying to understand how do we make safe environments for our students in the fall, or for occupants in any of these office buildings as they come back. So it's obviously affecting cost, efficiency. You mentioned the grid and smart grid. So again, 5 years, what's drawn that uptick? And then in relation to COVID, last 5 months.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. The past 5 to 10 years even, there were a ton of incentives, 8, 10 years ago about energy management. People want visibility and transparency of their energy usage and spend. Tenants, for example, they want to know what their portion of the usage for billing purposes. When money changes hands, everybody wants to understand where they're at in the picture, and they want it accurately. Retailers want to know if their buildings are running efficiently as profits are on the line. One customer of ours is reported to use 0.5% of the entire energy spend in the US. Just one customer. So you can imagine they're going to want to understand everything about every one of their stores, every piece of equipment, because that's a lot of money. If something's not running efficiently in a store or is on the brink of failure, the cost from loss of sale, downtime, spoiled, wasted product, that could be immeasurable. Global warming and conservation, I believe, really has sparked a responsible movement and forced people to take a hard look at what they can do to affect that. You hear a lot about the term the green energy movement. It's a great buzzword. What does it mean? I think a lot of people have really taken to that to try to lower their carbon footprints. I know sometimes when I walk into certain buildings, in the lobby, they'll have a nice energy dashboard with a TV that shows how many pounds of CO2 they have decreased by controlling their energy spend. So I think that's really, people are really piling on and taking advantage of that and capitalizing on that, because I think it means a lot to them, whatever angle they're looking at from that. The total cost of energy spend for a particular entity, though, that helps drive related costs, which affect customers. It affects all of us. If a store isn't running efficiently, if a big box retail store is spending a lot on their energy spend, ultimately they're going to be passing that on to a consumer. They're not just going to eat that and think that we're great people. So I think everybody wants to control cost and everybody wants to understand where things are. COVID, I believe, has just taken the energy awareness to a new level. Building owners and business owners now realize the performance of their buildings will change and they need to be monitored and adapted. Solid data utilizing energy monitoring can help really form the baseline. A lot of customers right now are just very concerned about KW, KWH, and demand. Building owners shouldn't really gear their building's performance to full occupancy if it's half full, but they need a solid baseline to understand what that looks like for them, what times during the day are they peak, are they going over and getting nailed with peak demand charges, is equipment failing. HVAC systems and air quality systems are now up in the forefront as people are wearing masks, being concerned about social distances. How efficient is that system for them, and how is it making the consumers feel when they're in those environments? I mean, all of those things are just hugely important, and they're just really being put under the microscope. And it's a balancing act for building and business owners to ensure a safe and comfortable work environment, keeping costs down and keeping everything within a reasonable range. And that's been the biggest tricky part, that when we speak to some of our customers, some of our building contractors, it's getting the cost of getting everything running efficiently, making sure that the lighting is on par, that the rooftop units are running efficiently, the cooling systems are running efficiently, and more people are kind of looking toward energy management just for those kinds of things. Simple anecdote, overloading the grid and taking on peak demand charges is a heavy financial burden. Once you hit a certain demand and all of a sudden your cost per kilowatt goes triple, that's a big deal for some businesses, and especially businesses that are hurting. Keeping the system balanced is a key factor, and knowing what your demand is during the day will help overall optimization. I think a lot of that stuff is being driven not only by COVID, energy management, alternative energy, solar applications, everything is driving people's awareness of their dependency on energy.
Anytime there's this massive shift, like in an industry or in the economy, something like that, and everybody has to adapt quickly, all the nuances of everything that we deal with on a daily basis sort of start to come out, and you realize how complex the world is.
Yes.
And because again, I just keep thinking, each of those things that you're talking about, we could spend the entire time talking about, because that's how far deep you can go. Whether it's the safety of the occupant, just efficiency of equipment, alarming when something goes down, security, all that. The two terms, and I wrote them down here, two terms that you said that really stood out too, is like visibility and transparency. Mm-hmm. So the more information that comes out, not only for business, business owners or decision makers or leadership teams, management teams, but again, it's can we get the data that we need in an efficient way, in a quick way, and in a way that makes sense, that we can quickly make decisions as they come up. So creating baselines for how much energy we're using now, because we're just about to put in this UV system on 6 of our AHUs, right? So how is that, what's that change going to be? Do we need to preemptively go and talk to our utility company and start saying, hey, it looks like we're going to be reaching our threshold soon?
Right.
So when we talk about, again, from an IoT standpoint, visibility and transparency, we see open systems. You guys obviously BACnet Modbus. A lot of traditional manufacturers in the HVAC space are utilizing a lot of proprietary points. KMC is a proponent of open protocols and open points, so that we can get that data out and again bring it into our platform, or any other platform that KMC Control sells. We sell many. I'm most interested in KMC Commander. And for this topic, IoT, so it's our cloud-based solution, but being able to send it there and then send it to anywhere else, that's huge. So I think not only is getting all that data important, but it has to be from a vendor that provides it in an open way, isn't going to charge you an arm and a leg, or take advantage of a particular situation to add a special driver so you can get it out. And that's another reason that we love partnering with you guys. Reino, did you have anything to add about that topic and maybe what has grown the market in the last 5-10 years, like Kevin was saying?
Well, just a specific example, if I just was working with a customer, and they needed to have a remote view of what was going on in their building during this time. They were worried about having, because the equipment's still running, the building's still moving. It's a living thing, so he was really concerned that, equipment was going to break down or something like that. They had to have that view of it. So he was looking for different ways to get in there, put the metering on board, and then get that view remotely, to still be able to take care of their building and make sure everything's running correctly and everything like that. So that's kind of where I see more and more, of these projects coming along, is the remote view and seeing how the building's going and working.
Yeah, most definitely. Okay, so there's the past. There's a little bit of the present and kind of the dynamics that we're working in. Let's talk a little bit about the future. We're all fortune tellers. We were just talking about, predicting the lottery right before this. So smart meters, cloud-based systems, right? They're allowing people to track energy consumption remotely, just like you said, Reino. Business Insider Intelligence, here's a statistic for you, expects utility companies to save $157 billion by 2035 by using smart meters. So not only is it going to be increasing, just like we were talking about, but it's going to be an enormous industry later. So clearly you guys are looking at this. What do you think now is not only driving, not only COVID, but now looking to the future? What else is driving that future expansion? What are you guys seeing?
Well, I think for a lot of building owners, it all starts at the utility level. And that statistic that you mentioned was very eye-opening, $157 billion by installing smart meters. I think when you talk to some building owners, some business owners, they look at that and they kind of think, it starts with the utility. If the utility meter coming into the building is accurate, then they can kind of build on that going forward into their own environment, kind of as a clean slate kind of tactic. Now I understand that what I've got coming in here is good for the utility. I'm going to build my own system on the inside of that building. So they feel like they've got a strong foundation on which to build their system. I think you hit it on the head at the very start when you were talking about the commander. I think the energy dashboarding and analytics is huge. The numbers are right in front of the numbers are right in front of you. When you have a dashboard and you can show virtually kind of what your building looks like, it's living and breathing, like Reino said, what it looks like, what you're doing. It's a feel-good thing, I think, for consumers. I was talking, we were out at a college campus doing a rollout for energy monitoring out there, and we just happened to be talking to one of the students who was in the energy program. And the first thing that he said was, it's just a good feeling to understand that my school is taking an initiative into energy conservation. So I think there's a cost aspect of this where you look at the baseline and you say, gosh, I'm saving a lot of money. I'm being able to do something really good for my pocketbook. And then there's the people out there who are saying, this is a great thing to do for the environment. And so you've got the two sides there as well. Then you add in alternative energy and renewable resources like solar power. It takes things up another level. People are going to want to understand, for the longest time, there was this connotation about alternative energy and getting away from fossil fuels, and I believe that to be true. But now you've got some data behind it. You can now monitor your solar arrays that are on these buildings. Some of our retail stores that use our meters for retrofit energy monitoring also tie into their solar arrays. It's by using the dashboards and the analytics that you're talking about, it's just a direct correlation where you can immediately visually see ROI. And I think that a lot of people are going to look at that and say, gosh, I like where this is going. Commercial buildings are adopting solar power on rooftop to supplement their energy usage, particularly in the green movement. You can see the lowering of that carbon footprint. And as momentum grows for energy independence, to more renewable energies, the call to track and display the data to show the true ROI is just going to increase. So I think that smart metering paves the way there. The way that they can actually tie that into their own participation into that is pretty cool. So I really do think that, and not only it's the correct thing to do, but I think psychologically people don't want to have that left behind feeling. You know, if XYZ retailer is doing solar panels on the top of their rooftop and they're getting a lot of PR for it, the guy down the street who's their competitor is not doing it, he doesn't want to be left out. And I think people will see the true value of that. So I think that's a huge driver.
Yeah, most definitely. You know, so the way I talk about it sometimes is quantitative versus qualitative ROI. You know, a saying that I've been hearing a lot lately is that facts don't care about your feelings. But you know what does care about your feelings? Feelings. Feelings care about your feelings. So, you know, you go in and you say, hey, we can give you this sort of ROI by just helping you measure what your efficiency is and helping you inform decisions to, you know, increase efficiency, right? You know, don't use this if I don't need to, that sort of thing. But then you talk about the qualitative side, it's that feel good. You know, we talk about this with our indoor air quality all the time. It's important to see the facts and the data that just to make sure that you have low infection transmissibility, right?
Yeah.
But there's also so much occupant well-being that goes into that you can't really measure with, you know, numbers, but you know that people are being more productive. They're working without worrying as much about, you know, the quality of the air, or even giving someone a thermostat on their phone so they don't have to go touch the one on the wall. I mean, just little things like that can have this this additional effect or this exponential effect, and that's really important.
Well, you know, technology is driving a lot of things too. You know, the cloud-based, you throw in the technology from now, the cloud-based services, and managing and accessing that data a lot easier, especially in a COVID environment. But some people look at, you know, their building environment, for example, and oh, my building's too small for a full-blown BMS system. But they still want to collect all this data and they still want to see it. And with more of the workforce being remote, the cloud-based systems are going to be become increasingly more popular. Business owners want to extract the data without human interaction, and that's one thing that COVID has done for us all. You know, we had a large rollout with a big customer, multiple installation teams across the country. That was all shut down during the COVID environment. And now as they open up and they start getting those installation things going, there's a ton more precautions for that. You know, guidelines they didn't have pre 2-3 months ago. So being able to not only access and commission and install and do things more remotely just for the installation and setup purpose, the act of just physically retrieving that data without having to have a bunch of people around is going to be huge.
Yeah. So here's another statistic for you, Gartner. This is one of my favorite statistics because a lot of times when I present it, I'm like, really, you could just pick whatever number you want because there's so many people that have reported on this. You know, it's the how many IoT devices are out there, right? Because it all depends on how you classify or what you classify an IoT device at. Gartner is, I have enjoyed much of their research and a lot of what they do, particularly their emerging technology hype cycle. So what they have reported is that around 8.4 billion IoT devices were in use in 2017, so 3 years ago. That's up 31% from the year before, and it will likely reach 20.4 billion by 2020, which is this year. Who knows what COVID will do to that? I mean, probably, I don't know, 2x that number, maybe. I mean, who knows? You know, those are the things that we're trying to wonder or trying to figure out and wait and see. But you know, at the end of the day, the question is that going to continue? Is it short term? Is it a fad?
That's a great question. I think by and large, I think the effect of COVID really just fanned the flame of technology. It put in the forefront, what can we do without the interaction? How can we get smarter about collecting some of this data? I think it was already there. I just think now with everybody on edge, the population has continued to grow. energy usage is going to grow with the population. I don't see this as a fad. I really do think the adage, you can't measure what you don't meter, is really starting to resonate. There are far more buildings in existence right now that do not have energy management. You look at the number of new construction buildings going up versus what's already out there. I think that this is not just a fad. I think it will become a standard. If you look at some of the standards coming out of New York, out of California, other municipalities that now require building managers to manage the energy, I don't see that going away. The opportunity for retrofitting existing building to meet these new standards is limitless. And I think the more people start to understand the value of that, some of the controls contractors and installation contractors that we deal with, they're starting to see that as well.
Yeah. Okay. So you're talking about different audiences now, different people. One of the things that we really wanted to hit home with on this webinar was revenue opportunities, right? Drive new revenue with metering.
Yeah.
Part of that is, the what's in it for me, right? So let's go through this. We've identified a couple that we want to review. We'll go one at a time. Let's say that I am a business owner, and you could talk about, ROI in general first to kind of lead it on if you want. But let's say I'm a business owner in general, or even that I'm a school system.
Okay. So business owner, I mean, everybody's going to have their own WIFM because there's different values for different target markets, and what a property management company sees as a value, the business owner is probably just going to shrug off because that really doesn't hit home to him, i.e. it doesn't really hit his pocketbook. In my opinion, the business owners may be more concerned with how efficiently their total systems are running, as this has a direct effect on their ROI. Everybody has a monthly budget. Everybody has yearly expenses. They want to make sure that they can control the cost where they can control them. I think for a business owner, the building system is paramount into that. Is all your equipment running as efficiently as possible? Is it time to replace a piece of equipment before it fails? Could you save lighting costs by implementing an LED retrofit? Every piece of that thought process really can affect both your bottom line and what you charge for goods or services.
Yeah.
So you got to keep that stuff in mind. And for a contractor going in and talking to some of these business owners about this kind of stuff, if you have that kind of stuff in the back of your mind and you understand where people's different pain points are, that's huge. Potentially the biggest nightmare scenario for a retailer, for example, or a business owner, one that happened to a customer before. During the off hours, some of the refrigeration units failed, and the response time was not enough to save, perishable refrigerated and frozen products. And I believe they threw out somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000 worth of grocery products that they couldn't salvage.
It's painful.
They're new. I'd rather have them do that than buy something in the slightly tainted section and understand.
That is true. Manager special, Kevin. Manager special.
And you've got numerous examples of lighting studies used, to baseline the energy usage for parking lots or campus lighting. Customers were able to save over 40% on their lighting costs by switching over to an LED retrofit, for example. So these are all kinds of things that you kind of got to have knowledge of, and it's all about figuring out what everybody's WIFM is. A property management company is going to be focused on predominantly tenant sub-metering and accurately billing each tenant, along with monitoring the common areas. I mean, a lot of these things are going to affect rent.
Yeah.
A school is a lot of departments might operate on different budgets. The psychology department doesn't want to pay a split share for what the engineering department eats up most of the energy, and things like that. All of that stuff could also affect tuition. So there are just things you got to keep in mind when you're starting to identify revenue streams. I think they're all over the place if you understand kind of what's important to that target.
Yeah. Value selling to the audience. Making sure that what's on their whiteboard, right? What are they really concerned about, and then how could you help them and attack that? So one of the things. Oh, go ahead, Kevin. No, go ahead.
I forgot a point. When when you deploy a product, when you sell a power meter, a network power meter, a DENT commander to a customer, one of the biggest things they want is they want to verify what they were sold. Is it working? It's no sense of somebody buying a fancy, shiny new rooftop unit or a cooling system and to find out that it's not running efficiently or at capacity, or it's broken and you don't know it because there's no metering on it. It's those kinds of things that can zap your energy bill, that can cost you a ton of money, and in the long run, and you see your bill every month and think, how is this possible? So preventative maintenance is a lot of that stuff too.
Yeah, no, that's huge.
Even piggybacking also, like on the utility, to make sure that what you are getting billed for is actually what you're receiving too. You see a lot of that where they'll piggyback a meter behind a utility and just verify the energy that you guys are getting billed for. So a lot of that stuff is going on also.
Yeah, it was a good thing, especially if you have an aging meter that just isn't getting replaced, and you want to make sure that everything's up to snuff.
Sure.
As we talk about revenue and business opportunities, whether it's the end users, I mean, largely what we just talked about was end users, but now what about for system integrators, right? That's our core channel. Probably many of the people watching this right now, or watching it on YouTube, whatever it is. One of the potential downsides to electric metering, or really, I think it's anytime you insert additional sensors, right, is that it can be a big time suck, very laborious, which makes it very expensive, could make it a harder sell. There's a lot of potential for human error, that's a huge risk. So one of the things that we're seeing in the marketplace as we talk about IoT and technology is this shift to more wireless solutions or less invasive deployments. Can you talk a little bit, just high level, about some of the pros and cons that you're seeing when it comes to metering? And then in your opinion, what are some of those minimum considerations that someone should take when choosing and deploying a new metering system?
I think one of the hardest things for a system integrator or an installation company to do is bid labor. Labor is a moving target. You don't fully understand, sometimes in your bid what something's going to cost to get it fully installed and operational. The cost for potential human error, like you said, is a huge factor. Again, COVID put a huge emphasis on the contactless interactions. So we're getting a lot more into the customers, people requesting wireless solutions that will, eliminate a lot of headaches, whether certain installers or certain companies have a problem with Cat 5 contractors running cable, or the cost of what that is. It's very invasive to a retail application. We had one of our customers say that if we had a wireless solution to push the data from our meters straight to the controller or to a router, it would save him roughly $11 million a year in his big box rollout retrofit. Those kinds of things are resonating, and again, when I talk about wireless, it is picking up some momentum. Installers want to do away with the costly and disruptive installs of large wire runs, but it's an easier install, it's a cleaner appearance, but there's some questions that need answering, and a lot of different things. Is the data being, what's your application? Is the data that you're transmitting, is it critical? How many data points are being transmitted over this wireless network? What's the range of your signal? Line of sight in a perfect environment, in a building environment, you don't have a space with no walls. So there's a lot of questions around that. But as we get forward with this COVID environment and the contactless thing, I think that's going to push a lot more people to figure out, okay, how can I do this wirelessly? How can I do this more effectively? How much data can I handle on a wireless solution without bogging down the network? And then there's also the protocol factor. So there's a lot of things. Network security is a huge thing right now. I think everybody's probably familiar with the Target incident, where their network was hacked. POS, they got into the POS system, and a lot of people's valuable credit information was compromised. So there's just a lot of things that you have to talk about before deciding whether you want a wired or wireless. I definitely think there's opportunities for both applications. You just kind of got to figure out where your application falls.
Yep. Yeah. Opportunities for sure. As we've developed our wireless Conquest product, we wanted to make sure that we were going to do it right and that we weren't, jumping into something, because reliability is a huge concern, right? And then what is it, Betamax or VHS, right? Like, which way do we go, right? And so, it's an interesting topic, and I always love bringing it up. The other thing too is it can add to some of your vulnerabilities, right? So last week, if everyone watching hasn't seen it, go back and look at last week's webinar. It was focused on security. Pete Tews, one of our IoT sales engineers, did an awesome job, along with a couple other partners of ours. So they talked both about physical and cybersecurity. Metering, from my standpoint, I don't spend a ton of time specifically in metering like you guys do, but metering seems simple and straightforward enough. But I mean, what are some of those security factors that people really should consider?
Well, one of our best and certified DENT installers, a company, RMS Solutions, out of Texas. They've been installing our meters for a long time now, and they're after us a little bit. A lot of people would want to see a wireless solution. For example, you get into the security things that you're talking about, but the security thing isn't just cyber; it's also physical. And sometimes when you have a meter for revenue grade applications, anywhere in a location that somebody can access, that can be tampered with. So you have to make sure that your setup and configuration is secure. You have to make sure the network is secure. So the physical tampering, that's stuff that we can deal with. The cyber tampering, that's stuff we have to make sure, obviously, that the network that we're putting this on is secure. Yeah. Because anything that happens that's tampered with ultimately hurts revenues and affects tenants and property owners, for example. The corporate network firewall, that I was talking about in the example before, that was penetrated by an open third-party device. It wasn't, thank God, it wasn't a DENT meter, but it was a third-party device, and I think a lot of people don't understand that there are ways to get into certain devices that are sitting on a network. So you just really have to be aware of that, and security for us now is coming to the forefront. Yeah.
Security is a huge focus of ours. Like I mentioned in one of the slides I showed, ground up security, right? Everything that we do, every task we complete, every roadmap we have, every item runs through a series of security checklists so that we make sure that we're not, putting out a bunch of open vulnerabilities, that we're working alongside the security protocols and policies that IT departments have. I mean, that's so important. And when we talk about collecting data from your devices and then bringing it up to the cloud, now, end user is trusting us with that data. What do we do with it? How do we handle it? And that's where it's very helpful to have some friends on the inside, on the IT side of things. So looking at the time, I definitely want to make sure that we have time for questions. And I'll turn it over here to Jason for a second. I just want to make sure, can you guys give me a 30 to 60 second remark on what's DENT's vision for smart meters and IoT moving forward?
So we want to advance with the technology as well. We've been talking a lot about wireless. We've been talking a lot about the smart grids, and obviously integrating into devices such as yours. Wireless solutions are very much on our roadmap. What that looks like, whether it would be LoRa, whether that would be Zigbee, there's a bunch of different things that we're evaluating right now. I think that the cloud services and getting your data to the cloud is where everybody ultimately wants to be. So DENT is very much looking into data push technology with the metering solutions, whether that be through the commander or something else. We see the true value in that there, and so we're hoping within, knock on wood, within the next year that we'll have something to share in that regard.
Yeah, excellent. So Kevin and Reino, thank you so much for your time. For questions now, I'm going to turn it back over to Jason and he will then moderate what we've got on deck. So Jason.
Thanks, Tim. So far, this has been a great discussion. Our first question is actually about previous episodes, so I'm going to go ahead and just address that. All of our previous episodes can be found on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/KMC Controls. I went ahead and posted that link in the chat. So if anybody has any issues with that, just go ahead and message, send a chat, and I can repost that link. All right, so for Kevin and Reino, what is the best way to dip your toe into smart metering if you're just getting started?
You know, I see a lot of guys just trying to get a baseline of what's going on. So, you know, it may just be a simple meter that's reading incoming power, you know, just your building power just to start off, get that baseline going. And then once you start doing that, you can kind of, like they've been saying the whole time, you know, you got to know where you're at before you can kind of do anything. So once you get that baseline, then you can, you know, move it forward and then get more metering, more in-depth metering into equipment, lighting, and everything else. So it's really just getting that first initial baseline going.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I think you guys, I'm sure, just like us, have heard the stories of someone's like, yeah, I want to sub-meter everything. I want every outlet to have a meter on it, and I want to know everything. And then you run into the big data problem, right? It's like, I have all this data, and what do I do with it? Like this, I just spent all this money and I can't do anything with it, right? So it goes back to that plan big, right? If you want every outlet, great. Let's do every outlet. Let's start small, and then we'll scale out as it makes sense, right?
We've had a lot of customers that have approached us about getting into the metering. Maybe they were on the environmental side, but saw the opportunity for energy management. And quite honestly, the place where it seems like everybody gets started is we send them a meter and they hook it up either at their house or in their office. I'm a tangible learner. I know a lot of the engineers that we work with are tangible learners. They'll get a demo meter and they'll plug it into their office. They'll monitor some loads that they're familiar with, so they can kind of get an idea of the interface, the commissioning for metering, and they'll kind of start where they're familiar. And once they get a little bit familiar with the product, for example, or the process and how to meter, then they'll feel comfortable enough going out to customers. But a lot of the times it's just, hey, can I get a demo unit to monitor either the incoming feed to my office or what have you? It's just it's something very simple. Start with what you're familiar with.
And here's an interesting question that talks about data. How can I maintain data and use it effectively?
So yeah, no, that's a good question. So going back to what we had said earlier, when you have a meter or a sensor or a device that has 1,500 points out of it, what are the ones that really make sense to me? So first, go through the steps of the ones that are most important. Identify the KPIs that you want to see and what you want to trend, and keep track of those things. If you could do it in a simple way, then the KMC Commander dashboard can show you, for instance, you know, here's the trend of that. Here's what, you know, the average has been every week for the past month. So that would kind of like be the simple way to just look at your data and make sense of it. If you then want to go that next step and you want to start getting more in depth, you can go to something like a fault detection analytics company. So we work with a couple of them. So take all that data up, send it to this company. Now they'll run it through pre-built algorithms based on ASHRAE standards, for instance, so that you can then start seeing, you know, maybe they're going to see fault detection. They're going to look at, is this something that should be serviced? They're going to look at, let's say it's an occupant wellness or comfort reading. How are we doing there? Maybe it's an energy reading. How are we doing there? So utilize what you have. Again, start small and then scale up to someone that's really good at analytics and getting all the data to them. If you want to go one step further, you know, look for an AI opportunity out there. There's more and more of them out there. It's fascinating what's coming out. It was just kind of a buzz term for a long time. For a lot of people, it still is. It's like, oh, you're running a calculation on the back end. But for others, it's like, no, like they're really taking algorithms and they're learning the process of what's happening over history and then predicting in the future, you know, what's happening. So it all depends on how deep you want to, you want to stick your toes in it, right? If it's just a little bit, then start small, start simple, and then you can scale up as much as you want. And we're happy to have conversations about how we can help you do that.
Outstanding. Our next question that's come in is asking, do you have to use the commander or something like it to install your smart meters?
No. So our meters can communicate either Modbus or BACnet. It's open protocol to really any building management system or third-party data acquisition device. We have a software, Viewpoint HD, that actually comes with the meter that you can configure our meters over a laptop. We love the commander. It ties into a lot of the analytics that DENT does not have. DENT spits the information out, but it would take something like a commander or a full-blown BMS system to analyze the data. So you do not need a commander to install it. You just need a master. Our devices are slave devices, so you need something to tie the meter into to extract the data. But the commander is not a necessity, but we love the performance of it.
That sounded like an outstanding answer to me. And our very last question is, do you have any specific examples that can prove ROI?
Who is that directed to?
I think that's directed to probably the power meters in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we work with building management systems. We work with companies that have proven energy savings through using any meter to establish a baseline to figure out building efficiencies or inefficiencies. We absolutely have case studies posted on our website that have ROI tied directly to DENT devices for sure. We're not at liberty to share every single customer story.
Please do.
And use customer names, but there are things on our website, yes.
Outstanding. So I would encourage everyone to go visit DENT's website, take a look at those case studies, and go check them out. All right, in our last 2 minutes here, why don't you just give me 30 seconds, final thoughts before we wrap it up. Kevin, let's start with you.
Okay. I think that again, the energy management sector, the way that smart meters are collecting data, especially now over the past 5 months to the next 2 or 3 years, depending on how everything rolls out, is going to be paramount. I think there's going to be a huge focus on again the human contactless event. I think that gathering that data is going to be more critical now. I think building information, air quality, things of that nature is all going to be deemed now critical data. So I do think that there's going to be some very, very valuable data points that energy monitoring is going to be able to collect.
Okay, with about 30 seconds left, Reino and then Tim.
Yeah, really, like I guess we've been promoting the whole time, is just to look at the metering, start small, really get a feel for how it works, and then push it to your system. And don't be afraid to ask and call us. We'll be more than happy to go through the metering stuff in depth with you guys. We can also go through a one-line diagram if that stuff comes up. So we're here to help you guys out in any questions that come up, any metering stuff. Obviously, I know that KMC is there for any of the commander information and anything like that. But yeah, just want to encourage everybody to really use us as a source, and we'd be more than happy to help everybody out with any of the questions that come up.
All right, Tim, 10 seconds.
I would just like to say that it is good to have good partners. DENT is an excellent partner of KMC Controls. If you're going to be successful in IoT, you have to be willing and able to collaborate. And I'm just excited to see what's coming forward when it comes to smart metering and IoT. Thanks for the opportunity, guys.
Thank you very much.
Kevin, Tim, Reino, I appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us. To everyone who attended this webinar, thank you so much. I appreciate your questions and involvement. We will be posting a link of this webinar in full on our YouTube channel. So if you'd like to share that with any of your friends or coworkers, I would please encourage you to do so. Once again, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.